Rugby Union now, where England are stepping up preparations ahead of their summer tour to Japan and New Zealand with a 4-day training camp at Pennyhill Park.
Steve Borthwick has named a 33-player training squad ahead of the tour, which begins later this month. And for more on it now, we can cross to our reporter James Cole.
Morning. Yes, the Premiership season is still ongoing. The final is this Saturday at Twickenham, but those England players not involved in that final are here preparing for the summer tour. England captain Jamie George among them. Jamie, I'd imagine you had the World Cup in the autumn, a long season with Saracens. Now you're in camp. Steve Borthwick's going to be taking it easy on you guys, yeah?
I wouldn't quite say it's been taking it easy. We've hit the ground running, let's put it that way. Yeah, it's been a tough few days. Obviously, the guys were in last week as well, and we heard some whispers that there was some pretty tough work going on, so they certainly weren't lying.
As part of that, to prepare for the heat of Japan, which is then followed by the winter in New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we know how hot it's going to be over there in Japan. Very hot, very humid. We've experienced it before. So they've got some heaters going on in the indoor centre, and yeah, it's tough work going on. A few tough watt bike sessions for the forwards, but funnily enough, the backs aren't doing too much.
Do you enjoy that? Have you found peace with that gruelling training, because you'd have to go through it again in pre-season? How do you approach it?
Oh, look, I think it's great. I think it sets the tone nicely. Obviously, end of season tours generally sometimes think people can sort of take your foot off the gas a little bit. We really want to go out there and get 3 wins out of 3. So in order to do that, we know we've got to work really, really hard, and we're a team that base ourselves around how hard we work and how tough we've got to be. So I think that sets some good foundations for that.
Japan, June the 22nd. A certain Eddie Jones is now in charge of them. Do you think some of the players in the squad might have a point to prove, having been overlooked by Eddie and now coming up against him?
Look, I think everyone's got their own individual motivations. I think ultimately, though, English rugby, anyone that's been involved in English rugby has a huge amount of respect for Eddie and everything that he achieved with us. And he's got some good ideas, I'm sure, about how to beat us. But at the same time, we've got a good idea around how Japan want to play, and we're going over there and really excited about taking English rugby over to Japan.
And how do you want to play? Because we saw a glimpse, didn't we, with this young side against Ireland and then France at the end of the Six Nations of an expansive game plan. Is that the way forward now for this team?
Absolutely. We want to go out there and express ourselves. I think we want to play to our strengths. I think English rugby has to be based around a strong defence. With Felix Jones coming in, I think we saw massive improvements in that throughout the Six Nations. But at the same time, when we get the opportunity with the ball, we've got to use it. We've got exciting young backs. We've got a few elderly people up front to shore down the ship. But, we've got some really exciting players, and, we'd be stupid not to try and utilise that, and that's definitely the plan.
And New Zealand, England haven't won in New Zealand since 2003. An incredible stat, really, when you think about it. How important is it to break that record, and what sort of statement would it be if you could do that?
Yeah, massive one. I think you look at Ireland going over there, was it last year or the year before, and it really sort of set the foundations for them going forward to become the #1 team in the world. And you look at the blueprint of how they did it. They went over there and took New Zealand on, and that record isn't great since 2003. Obviously, we've played them a few times at World Cups and beaten them at Twickenham and that kind of thing. So, we want to go over there and win. We're very clear about how we want to do that, but we also know how big a challenge it's going to be because they're the All Blacks at home, and having been over there on a tour myself, we know how passionate the Kiwi fans are also.
You finished your Premiership season last Friday. It's a bit of an end of an era, isn't it, for Saracens? A few big names moving on, the Vanapola brothers, Owen Farrell, of course. How big a rebuilding project do you think you've got to do for club?
Yeah, look, I think whenever you lose the calibre of the Vanapolas, Owen Farrell, Alex Lewington, those guys, they're always going to leave a big hole. But at the same time, we've got some good consistency. I think our recruitment's been really, really good, and really excited about where Saracens can go next season.
And Owen Farrell, obviously, a huge loss for Saracens. What sort of legacy will he leave? Some people feel maybe he hasn't had the credit he deserved, but his record is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, I think, in my eyes, I've known him for a very long time. He's obviously a very close friend of mine, so I might be biased, but I think he should go down, and I think he will go down as certainly one of the greatest Saracens players ever, if not the greatest English player ever. The things that he achieved, the way that he's led both teams, I don't think that Saracens or England will have achieved what they have achieved over the last 10 years without Owen Farrell.
And who fills his boots at number 10 is up for debate, but there's a young guy called Finn Smith taking on Bath at Twickenham on Saturday in that Premiership final. You're going to be watching that with your England hat on. A few guys who could be joining up with you on Monday, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm very excited for those guys. Obviously, I've been lucky enough to be there myself and know how big an occasion it is. And not many of them have been there and done it, and it's going to be great to see how those guys go, and hopefully all come through unscathed, and we meet up here on Monday.
You must be really excited by the young talent in that game and what it could mean for England, right?
Absolutely. You know, Northampton and Bath this season really have set the tone for how the Premiership has been played, the intensity of the game, and I think that's, you know, we're definitely going to see that in terms of how the game's played on Saturday. I think the ball's going to be thrown around a bit, but I also think it's going to be very, very physical. So there's some of those young guys in that team that hopefully will be joining up with us here on Monday for this tour. I think have been very, very impressive this year, and yeah, looking forward to seeing them go.
Jamie, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the hot weather training later on. I'm sure you will. So, yeah, as Jamie says, those Northampton and Bath players will join up on Monday. Steve Borthwick will name his squad for the summer tours on Monday. They take on Japan on June the 22nd, then New Zealand twice in Dunedin and Auckland in July, exclusively live on Sky Sports.
Thanks very much, James.